We're here to demand an immediate end to the war and to fund the wounded.
Military recruiters are in our high schools, they are in our colleges, they are affecting us, they are giving us lies, saying that they're going to give us money, that we're going to get all this job training, which doesn't happen at all. Less than a third of people that are recruited actually get money for colleges, which is the #1 reason why people join up.
They're our brothers, they're our sisters. We support war resistance.
The military is a giant machine that legitimizes violence.
We're redeploying people who are already diagnosed with PTSD or depression or some other psychiatric condition.
There's a lot of veterans that are not getting what they deserve.
As soon as they get into the war, they start cutting the benefits radically to veterans. What kind of message does that send to our veterans?
We failed the men and women who have gone over to this war, and whether the war was right, whether they agree whether it was right or not, it's about, we have to take care of the people now.
Just in my own experience of this war, all I've seen is contradictions.
We're here to let the world know and the country that we want an immediate end, and we want the veterans, combat veterans, all veterans, to get the care that they deserve.
We have veterans coming home and they don't have the care that they need. And so I feel like this is just a humanitarian issue. Basically, our soldiers are coming home without proper care, and so that issue needs to be addressed.
The conservative government estimates are 12 to 20% of returning veterans will have some symptoms of PTSD. It's a fact that over 50,000 have already been treated for PTSD in the VA system alone. We're redeploying people who are already diagnosed with PTSD or depression or some other psychiatric condition, which is obviously not a good idea. More than that, we're redeploying people who are already taking psychiatric medication.
There's a lot of veterans that are not getting what they deserve. There's a lot of scapegoating going on as well. They want to blame substance abuse as a lot of the problems, not to mention, personality disorders. They started labeling people having pre-existing personality disorders out of the blue. And I know there's so many different soldiers that were in my unit just being chaptered out of the Army that are still dealing with all these problems, and they're not getting VA care because of the type of chapter that they got.
It's so shameful that the budget for taking care of the cannon fodder, and it just proves that policymakers for this war don't care a single bit about the enlisted man. They never have, they never will. It's such an obvious class-based thing. And it's like, they don't care how many of them die as long as they can fill their pockets with the money from the oil revenues.
First recommendation is to completely restructure the disability benefits system. The system is absolutely broken. It needs to be completely overhauled. Many people in this room know of the tremendous heartache and distress that veterans have suffered from this problem. It can take a year to get a claim processed. If you appeal the claim, it can take 2 years or more to get the appeal processed. Currently, there's a backlog of 400,000 unprocessed claims. So we've got new claims coming in every day.
It's very important to people to realize that, yes, military members, veterans, and military families have been personally affected, but ultimately everyone has been affected by this war with the slashing of not only VA benefits, but health care and no money for schools. I mean, they had 7 schools on the chopping block here in the state of Washington because they didn't have enough funding, and all that funding is going to this occupation in Iraq. And how funny, the majority of these schools are in working class areas of color.
The military is the epitome of hierarchy, authority, and classism, which translates into the ranks and the chain of command. It's the epitome of racism. Certainly in the division it makes between us and them, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys, that's racism. It's the epitome of sexism, gender conformity, and homophobia. The military is a giant machine that legitimizes violence. The military sanitizes and glorifies violence. It rewards unquestioning blind allegiance and obedience, and it penalizes individual integrity. But the troops are there, and we are here, and unlike our government, we cannot and should not turn a blind eye to the suffering of everyone involved.
Just in my own experience of this war, all I've seen is contradictions. You can't have a war without pain, conscription, death, and that's what we've tricked ourselves into thinking. Since the Vietnam conflict was over, somehow we got it into our American routines that the great technology and the best fighting military in the world could somehow make the magic war, that is war with no conscription, the all-volunteer army, which is a lie.
What does a machine gun do for national defense? What do bombs do to defend us? Machine guns, bombs, tanks, they kill. They don't defend us. Are we not better protected by universal health care, affordable housing, than by a gun pointed at the Iraqis?
This profit-driven system, and let's call it by its name, capitalism, cannot survive without racism and imperialism. And we cannot put our faith in recommendations and liberal politicians.
My ROTC students' understanding of defense and protection necessitates a gun because according to their training, violence works, violence is necessary, it protects, it gets rewarded, and it is morally righteous. That is scary. But that is military training. It's military brainwashing. And unfortunately, once you are trained in violence, it leaves its mark on you. Your tour of duty is over, you come home, and you bring the war home. It's not over. Violence is not something you can leave at the door, much as you want to, hard as you try. Violence stays with you, the war stays with you. Because the training in violence is psychological, it stays with you. And when you come home after you've been trained in equating protection with killing, or equating defense with the ultimate form of violence, you're very, very likely to engage in domestic violence, and in many cases you do. So if you truly believe that you're actually defending the US by attacking Iraq, then you truly believe that aggression is appropriate action when one feels on the defensive. The US civilian population is reported to have 3.1 incidents of domestic violence per 1,000 people. In the military, in 2001, that is before the latest war, it was 16.5 per 1,000 compared to 3.1. However, we know that this is very, very seriously underreported. 47% of the reported case of domestic violence in the army led to absolutely no action. Wives and girlfriends are not the only ones who suffer. The children in military families also live in fear of their dad's violent anger. Teachers in elementary schools where there are many children of military families have noticed a very disturbing pattern. The children actually dread their father's visits. In their essays, their art, their role play, they model a happier household when the father is gone and a violent or scary household when the soldier dad is back. The rates of murder of babies and children under 10 in military homes is much, much higher than it is in civilian homes. Unless we deal with it, violence is passed on from generation to generation. We need to deal with it because the government doesn't.
The costs to the Iraqis are so devastating, it's hard to even speak about. It's appalling that they don't even come into our political calculus for ending this war, but they certainly should. There have been on the order of 1 million civilian casualties in Iraq from this war. Virtually everyone in the entire country has post-traumatic stress disorder. There is an entire generation of children that have grown up with indescribable trauma that are referred to as the lost generation. And these people are going to be uneducated and probably violent.
I was listening to the radio the other day. Some jackass called in and was saying, "We're kicking ass in Iraq, and for every one of our soldiers that they kill, we kill 100 of them. Well, 100 of what? 100 farmers, 100 children, 100 women in a field, 100 Osama bin Ladens.
There are 4 million people that are displaced from their homes. And in terms of civilian trauma, displacement from your home makes it much more likely for you to get PTSD. There are 2 million refugees outside of Iraq and another 2 million internally displaced.
4 million refugees from Iraq in the last 5 years, and more than 1 million Iraqi casualties, deaths. That is from a population of just over 26 million before we went in. That is close to 1 in every 6 Iraqi persons is either dead or displaced. I was an intel analyst in the Army. I studied a couple of conflicts, and my conclusion is that the Iraq conflict is one of the fastest genocides in modern history.
There are so many hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians who have paid the price, and I always wonder, why is it that those of us who support the troops here in the US, because in the US people join the army because they love their country, because there's no other source of employment, because they need the benefits, because they want to defend their country, and we support the troops. And we understand, and we may be against the war, but we're not against the troops because what the troops are doing is somewhat honorable. Why then do we not speak of the Iraqi troops that die, who have joined the army for extremely similar reasons?
The healthcare system in Iraq has been utterly destroyed. Utterly destroyed. It is not functioning at all. This was a healthcare system that was the best in the Arab world 20 years ago. People used to travel from other Arab countries and beyond to Baghdad to train in medicine.
The argument and the dialogue now is about the number of troops dying. I think we're going on 4,000. But that's just a drop in the bucket. Thousands of Iraqis die every day, and they are people too.
These veterans that are be coming back from Iraq are going to be in so much more need than the veterans from Vietnam, because the veterans of Vietnam, we were drafted. We went in, we did our 8 months or 10 months or 12 months and came home and said to hell with it. These guys go in, they think they're going in for a tour, and then they stop loss them. They won't let them come home. They keep them there 3, 4, 5 tours.
The rest of my friends in the Army who joined the same time I did, or shortly thereafter, are the ones who are now getting stop loss for their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year in Iraq.
And to keep them there this long, we're essentially destroying those people. And then in the process, we're cutting their benefits and telling them when they come home, we're going to charge you for food or for board, room and board. I mean, it's absolutely insane, immoral.
Reenlistment rates are the one indicator of morale that the Bush administration uses to say how much soldiers love this war, and other than the fact that they order their officers to write editorials to papers and publish articles about how well we're doing.
My battalion is in Iraq right now, and they don't want to be there. The military has screwed them over for a very long time, and now they're extending deployment dates. We have to realize that the troops want to come home. They know they're not fighting for this great cause. They're fighting for their lives and for their buddy's life. That's the reality of it. And the stress that military families go through back home is just as devastating.
It's going to be the soldiers and their families that are going to stop this war. The anti-war movement is good, but basically we're all supporters of, you know, what the real thing that should be happening is that people need to resist and rebel and to fight back against the system and the war.
What do we want? No. When do we want it? Now.
The key to any movement in this day and age of continuous imperialist wars requires the participation and leadership of active duty GIs uniting with their working class brothers and sisters.
It's really important to get young people out here. Young people are the ones that are disproportionately dying in this war. 60% of those who have died have been under the age of 26. If young people get out here and show that they understand that that is happening and understand that veterans are coming back without the proper care, I feel like that makes a way stronger statement.
People need to wake up and get involved and realize that we're all in this together, and we have to act and organize.
Our future is not yours to choose. You can say you've got to stop the communists. You can say that our ideals can't succeed. You can say that competition is the only way, and a global system based on greed. You can call yourself a Democrat. You can call yourself whatever you will.
Not the wounded, not the war! What the hell is Congress for?
We're here to demand an immediate end to the war and to fund the wounded.
Military recruiters are in our high schools, they are in our colleges, they're affecting us, they're giving us lies, saying that they're going to give us money, that we're going to get all this job training, which doesn't happen at all. Less than a third of people that are recruited actually get money for colleges, which is the #1 reason why people join up.
It's coming home and they don't have the care that they need. And so I feel like this is just a humanitarian issue, basically. Our soldiers are coming home without proper care, and so that issue needs to be addressed.
The conservative government estimates are 12 to 20% of returning veterans will have some symptoms of PTSD. It's a fact that over 50,000 have already been treated for PTSD in the VA system alone. We're redeploying people.
The military is a giant machine that legitimizes violence.
We're redeploying people who are already diagnosed with PTSD or depression or some other psychiatric condition.
There's a lot of veterans that are not getting what they deserve.
As soon as they get into the war, they start cutting the benefits radically to veterans. What kind of message does that send to our veterans?
We failed the men and women who have gone over to this war, and whether the war was right, whether they agree whether it was right or not, it's about, we have to take care of the people now.
Just in my own experience of this war, all I've seen is contradictions.
We're here to let the world know and the country that we want an immediate end, and we want the veterans, combat veterans, all veterans, to get the care that they deserve.
We have veterans
who are already diagnosed with PTSD or depression or some other psychiatric condition, which is obviously not a good idea. More than that, we're redeploying people who are already taking psychiatric medication.
There's a lot of veterans that are not getting what they deserve. There's a lot of scapegoating going on as well. They want to blame substance abuse as a lot of the problems, not to mention, personality disorders. They started labeling people having